I tried hawking once and I was just like, I am not doing this again. I am not doing this again ever. I literally walked, for those who understand the context, from my house, which is literally close to Kemu, essentially. And I walked all the way to town. And I think I sold like one packet. And the only person I sold it to was the person that I was actually going to see because I was going to see somebody. And then I remember just walking with my bucket back home and being like, okay, I don't think I have it in me to hawk. The first days when I used to do laundry, because that was my part, like my hands kept my hands kept peeling so much, because it was like I used to skip like a day. So I used to work on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And sometimes I would go to work on Wednesday and my hands were still a little sore from the cleaning from from Monday. And God was just like, sasa nguo hautafua. Maandazi hautauza. He was like, aya, sawa, basi. Let's find you something different to do. This is the official video of the origin story of the Chayyim podcast. I know a lot of you have been wondering, how did I come to the name Chayyim? What was the inspiration behind it? What made me want to create a podcast like this? And today I am here to answer some of your questions. I would like to tell you where all of this originated. Thank you so much for joining me today for the Chayyim podcast. I am so happy to have you, friend. So let's go. All right. So in 2020, I have mentioned this before, was the first time ever I listened to a podcast. And almost immediately, I got hooked on podcasts. I was just like, this is so amazing. It felt like radio, but like radio on demand. I could listen to whoever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And there was just so many things to choose from. Fast forward to the beginning of 2022, that is when I first had the idea to do my own podcast. So I started going through some of the ideas that I had heard about, some of the things that I love to talk about. But just like from a long time ago, I really just like to yap. The long and short of it is I am a yapper. Like... sharing stories. I'm not necessarily like the person in the group who will be telling stories, but I love to listen to them. And most of the time, like when there's something to be spoken about, I like to. And I like sharing my thoughts, my ideas, things that are going on in my head, some of the things that I'm learning. And more so, I just realized that communication is something that comes almost naturally to me. I really just like standing in front of people, sharing my thoughts and ideas, sharing encouragement and hope, that sort of thing. When I was thinking about having a podcast back in 2022, I knew one or two things. First of all, that I would very much like to speak about my faith. It is the one thing that I can endlessly talk about. My relationship with Jesus just inspires me to talk about him, to talk about us, to talk about the faith journey. And so that was early in 2022. That's when I started thinking, what if I would have a podcast? I was like, I would like to create a podcast. So I started telling a few of my friends around, I'm going to create a podcast someday. And I'm so glad it came to pass. Anyways, I knew I very much would like to create a podcast where I shared about my faith, but not necessarily in the lens of reading to you scripture or this is what the Bible says. Amazing. We would probably have some of that along the way, but mostly just talking about the faith journey. And as I have grown in my own faith, as time has gone by, I've realized that there are quite a few areas in our Christian journey that we don't talk about a lot, or that we just like presume, like we don't... there are some experiences that we go through that just feel... you can feel lonely when you're going through some things. For example, burnout. It is so common amongst people who serve, but we don't openly speak about it. So I just wanted to have a platform where we can share our faith experiences in a way that is uplifting and edifying, but also in a way that is raw and unfiltered. Come 2023. So in 2022, it was mostly just an idea. I was like, yeah, I'd like to do this sometime. But at the moment, I was in an internship program at our church. So I was like, well, I'll just like stay with the idea and then see what comes out of it once I am done with the program. So the program ended at the end of 2022. When 2023 began, I was like, yeah, this is actually something that I would like to pursue. The other thing that had also happened in my personal life before then was I had found myself in this identity crisis and also like a career crisis. It started as a career crisis because at that time, I was almost done with my university degree, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me what I was going to do afterward. My degree is in technology, and I just felt like it is such a vast field. And it wasn't for me so much so the issue of where will I go. It was tech is so diverse, and I feel like there is just so many things that I could do and so many things that I feel interested in. So I felt like there was like 5 different paths pulling at me at the same time, and I couldn't figure out where to start. That was actually one of my issues. As time went by, I realized this is not just a career crisis. This is a full-on identity crisis, because I realized I don't know me. I don't know the things that come naturally to me. I find it difficult to choose a path that I will go down, because I keep wondering, okay, so then I do this. This is so nice. I like this. This other path, this is so interesting. I like this as well. So I realized at the core of it all, it was like an identity crisis. Like I had never really sat down to ask myself, who actually is Jordana? What does she like? What things do come naturally to her? What dreams do I have? What would I like to pursue? And being in the internship program I was in 2022 really helped me to just calm down, sit with myself, process that transition that was happening, and start to figure out like the different facets of my identity, my background story, processing some of the things that had been sitting in my heart and in my soul for like the longest time, some of the like just difficult parts of my story. And through all of that, I realized that is actually when I came to the realization that there was a seed that was planted in me all those many years back that I had never really thought that much about. And so in 2023, I was like, well, I think I now actually want to take this podcasting thing seriously. But let me tell you, hey, tunasemanga we plan and then the Lord establishes our plans. The time when you're planning in your head, this is when I want to do whatever it is I want to do, and the Lord is looking at you, is like, your ideas are cute, but wait for my timing. Hey, sasa of course, this I knew podcasting is going to take a bit before it takes off. I would like to pursue it as a full-time career, but I knew it was going to take some time because I'm relatively new. This is just like exploring. So I knew I was going to have to like get a job. I had like a plan. And then in February, so that's the December festivities in Asia. In January, I had seen my sisters off to school. Come February, my laptop, which I was supposed to use for work, broke down unexpectedly. And at that point, I couldn't gather together the money to fix it because it was going to cost me quite a bit. And that threw me into this whole space of just feeling disillusioned, because I was just like, sasa hapa mtu anaanzia wapi? And so, of course, I had to ask for help from my parents to fix my laptop. And it took all of almost 7 or 8 months before that laptop actually got fixed. I have never felt exhausted and stagnant like I did during that time. I mean, there are times in my life when I have felt that stagnant, but like in 2023, that hit me so hard because I was just like, hey, God, now where do we start? But I mean, there was also school to complete. So there was just quite a few things that were going on. So now, towards the end of 2023, around September, something like I remember just I was in church on a Sunday during a Sunday service. And I remember just looking at the equipment that was being used to run the service. And I was like, this is essentially some of what I need to run a podcast. I mean, microphones, nini, nini. So I was like, this church community is not like my home church community. Like, these are not the people I know. But I knew, so at that point I had gone to stay with my family because I had moved away from where my church community is, which is in Meru. And I was staying in Juja at the time. For context, those are like two towns that are like a little over 5 hours by public transport apart. So I was like, if I go to Meru, I have a chance, first of all, of finishing my degree because I had not finished my degree. And also, I have a chance of starting this podcast because then I have community that I can rely on. Or so I thought. When we say in these streets, dust is constant, let me tell you. So I moved. I left home and I was like, and it was in my heart, I knew this is not just me waking up and deciding I'm going to go. I was certain, and to date, I'm still very certain that it was actually a nudge from the Lord for me to move. So I was like, I remember that it was 14th of September. I don't know if I'll ever forget that day. And I moved, and I was just like, it felt like the start, day one of the rest of my life. Anyway. When I say I landed in Meru and like literally almost from day one, things started going haywire. I am not even joking, guys. Because first of all, I realized that the community I thought I had back in Meru, what I consider to be my community, it had been like a little over 7 months before I had like seen people or interacted closely with them. So people had moved on without me. So I just remember coming back to church and I'm so excited to see people. And in my mind, I'm thinking, picking off where we left things. Nah, starting from square one is exactly what was happening. And I remember just like these events that just happened during that time. And I was just like, where is this? It felt like being in a totally new place. But like, do you know like that betrayal of, these are people I know, but it's like, are these the people I know? It's like being a stranger in a familiar place. It was quite the shock, and just, I quickly moved from having like bright hope and I want to accomplish my dreams finally after feeling stuck for like 7 months or something, and realizing, hey, yeah, it is not going to happen. So very quickly, I had to reroute. I was just like, first of all, the money I have is going to end before I have even done anything. I need to figure out how is school going to go. Am I launching this podcast or am I not? And I already had like an idea. It was totally like a different ideas. Like the podcast, first of all, has to go on hold because I do not have the capacity for any creativity in me that is required to launch a podcast. And honestly, back then, I think I didn't even know like the full extent of what it would require. I mean, I did have an idea, but not as much as I do right now, of course. So as part of my recalibrating plan, I found myself having to prepare and sell mandazis for a living, which technically was not living. It was essentially just like, mtu anitumie hiyo 50 bob, because that 50 bob ndio italipa fare ya kwenda kanisa kesho on Sunday. And I am so grateful because in as much as there's like a lot of people that I thought I could rely on during that time. And then I quickly realized I actually couldn't because I had the wrong idea of community in my mind. There were also just some friends of mine who really did come through for me so much, especially like the people who, my friends from school, who did buy Maandazi from me at that time. Because I don't know how I would have moved on past that. But of course, it became very quickly unsustainable. I didn't know anything about running a sustainable business, selling, even I tried hawking once and I was just like, I am not doing this again. I am not doing this again ever. I literally walked, for those who understand the context, from my house, which is literally close to Kemu, essentially. And I walked all the way to town. And I think I sold like one packet. And the only person I sold it to was the person that I was actually going to see, because I was going to see somebody. And then I remember just walking with my bucket back home and being like, okay, I don't think I have it in me to hawk. I was just like, so my strategy was wake up early in the morning. I used to wake up at 3 a.m., knead my dough, prepare my Maandazi, and then just move around and deliver to some of my friends in school and some of them outside school. And I'm so grateful for Aki, those guys. They really did give me, they gave me a lifeline. So the Chayyim podcast, the story of the Chayyim podcast is nothing without the story of that time, specifically September or September of 2024, 2023, all the way to like January of 2024. That story really is the making of Chayyim, because my Maandazi business did not did not pan out, and I mean things just continued getting worse somehow. So much so that at some point I was just like, okay, now I need to figure out if I'm going to even be able to afford having rent above my head, having a roof above my head, and if I'm going to afford my meals at all. And a lot of my friends really did come through for me at that time. And I'm so grateful also, because whenever one thing failed, for example, when the Maandazi business did not pan out, just like nearly at the same time, there was a friend of mine who needed somebody to work. She was expectant, and she needed somebody to work in her house as a house help, and had just been talking about with my friend about a cleaning business. So then I was available at that point to at least work at her home as her house help for like I think 2 or 3-ish months. And when now she was about to give birth, and then she needed somebody to stay now like almost full time, and I knew that is not something that I could do, because I mean had literally little to no experience about raising a little baby. So then again I had needed to find something else to do, and just not really by luck, but there's another friend of us again, just from our church community, who needed help with like a website that he was setting up, and he needed somebody to do a bit of copywriting work for him. And even the way that we had started interacting with him is because I had helped with like our church was doing a launch. So because the time when I was starting to do this work for him, that was I think now the January of 2024. And we had interacted a bit when we were doing like a church project together. We were doing a launch back in October. So God really just kept, he sort of just like one thing would fail, and then he would put like the next thing in path, and then that would fail, and then he would put like the next more thing in place. So the point where it got to a place where, okay, now nothing is working all together, I got an opportunity to move to Kisumu, because one of my closest aunts had moved to Kisumu. And I think Kisumu also is the next major part of this story, because when I got to Kisumu, I found a job opportunity, thank God. And the organization that I was working with at that point, Pamoja, they had an idea to do a podcast. So it was just like God sort of giving me a bit of respite. It was like, hawezi uza Maandazi. Yeah, kazi ya kukua house help. I remember the first days when I used to do laundry, because that was my part. Like my hands kept peeling so much. So because it was like I used to skip like a day. So I used to work on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And sometimes I would go to work on Wednesday, and my hands were still a little sore from the cleaning from from Monday. And God was just like, sasa nguo hautafua. Maandazi hautauza. He was like, aya, sawa, basi, let's find you something different to do. And so when I got to the organization, Pamoja, and our director told us that there was an idea to do a podcast for the organization, but it had never really gotten off the ground, I was just like, I came into 2024 or 2023 ready to do a podcast. You don't need to sell me on the idea. I am here. What do we need to do? And because of doing that, I got the chance to produce the Wellness Junction podcast, which is the podcast I've been producing since January of this year. For I think we went steady for about 8 months with maybe 2 or so episodes reproducing every month. And that was such a huge honor of my podcasting life, because I got to get the hands-on experience of actually what it means to produce a podcast. And let me tell you guys, you think you know what it takes. You think you have an idea of what it takes to produce a podcast, and like there's work that goes on behind the scenes, and then you get actually to do the work and you realize there is so much more than you would actually ever think. And the fact that I was doing this, the production work, I was doing literally almost all of it by myself. Actually coming up with the ideas, our director acts as my co-executive producer, but like I do the production work all by myself. I host the podcast, I edit, I publish, I do the social media work for it. And I'm so glad, because that has given me so much experience with actually what it takes to produce a podcast. And I realized that God did slow me down from the timeline that I had in mind, or the timeline that I thought He had in mind for me. Working on the Wellness Junction podcast was one of the most profound, it was like such a huge blessing for me, because it allowed me to get the experience of what it actually means to produce a podcast. And when I think about the fact that initially I felt so disillusioned by the fact that the plans I had in mind, what I thought God was directing me to do, and when it didn't pan out, I felt so disillusioned. I was just like, am I ever really going to be able to produce a podcast, to create a podcast ever? I'm like, how soon is this actually going to happen? And it's like I had lost all hope, especially like when 2024 was starting. I was just like, I have no idea. Like, I was just like, I remember just starting the year on such a low note, because I was like, Aki, honestly, God, I don't even have the capacity in me to hope, because what is the essence of hoping when I came and, I had like so much hope, and then the things I really had hoped for really didn't pan out. But when I think now, when things started looking back up again, and when I got working just in the organization, the things that I was working on, and specifically with the podcast, I realized there's a lot of times when God will slow us down on the things that He Himself, the dreams that He Himself has put in our hearts. And during those times, it can be so hard to hold on to hope, and to, sort of even lose hope on the fact that those dreams are ever going to become a reality, because there's nothing as hurtful, or I think that this is like an ache in our heart when we have dreams and hopes that we are holding on to, and it just feels like it is such a long time. Can you imagine, like one of the most common Bible stories being the story of Abraham waiting for 25 years. And oftentimes I just wonder, why does God give us promises so much far time ahead before He actually comes to fulfill them? And I think there's usually just like that time in between when He is refining our character and like creating capacity for us to be able to receive the things that He promises us. Because when I think about the things I thought I knew about, even just like this, it's not even just like the journey of podcasting itself, like the technical work of it, but actually the actual cost, which is, where I am coming from when I am sharing the content that I now realize there was so much more that God needed to do in my heart, in my life, changing my perspectives. And there's just a way in which He has made things line up for me to be able to bring this podcast right now. And I think one of the most important for me right now is just like the friends I have around me. Hi guys, all of you who are behind the scenes. It is such a crucial piece to this podcast, because I mean, this wouldn't even be possible without my friends. Truly, I don't think I would have the capacity to keep pushing to actually have this come as a reality. Especially because even right now, as I am shooting this, a lot of things have happened. And at a point, I was just like, whoa, is this podcast even going to happen? And I'm so glad that I mean, am I glad? I think saying I am glad is stretching it. I am thankful that the obstacles that God puts in our ways are usually to stretch our resilience. Now that I mentioned resilience, three of the three core pillars of this podcast are being a people who are growing, who are grounded, and who are resilient. Being a person who is constantly growing deeply matters to me because it is life. Growing is the nature of life. I mean, when we look at nature all around us, things are in a sort of way almost always growing. We grow up, we grow down, getting our roots, and we grow wide, we spread our wings, we fly. So growing is really a central part of, just it's like a really core value of mine. And the other one is being grounded. I think just moving through the scenario and the drama that was 2023, especially like September to December, listen, it made me realize that having a sense of being anchored somewhere is so important, because at that point I really just felt like I got so easily tossed around by like someone will essentially just like say hi to me and move on very quickly, and I'm like, mbona unasalimia alafu unaenda? So we're supposed to like stand and share stories. I mean, we've not seen each other for how many months and something like that. I mean, like just like the small things would really get to me. And in that moment, I realized it is so important to have like a sense of grounding in my identity, in my worth, in who I am, in realizing that people are awesome. Even just right now, I have said I'm so grateful to have the community I have around me. Also, having like an individual sense of worth outside of people is so important. So like just having my identity grounded and rooted in the Lord, and in who He says I am, and in just like knowing that, so I'm not constantly tossed around, is so important. And the other one about resilience, I mean, life will stretch us without us asking for it, and even without us contributing to it. Even Jesus said, in this world, you will experience trouble. Trouble will always be coming for us. Heartbreak, financial distress, difficult relationships, calamities of life, seeing other people suffering, hardship is just like literally all around us, inside us. We cause it, we experience it. And our ability to stay sane and our ability to come back to ourselves, so to speak, really does speak to our resilience. And that is something that I also really, truly, deeply care for. The name Chayyim, to wrap this up by telling you guys exactly how the name Chayyim came about. So in 2021 was the time when I was having that whole spectacle of my career crisis, which then I realized was an identity crisis. And I was just like, oh my God, what is my life coming? What is my life coming to? I was like, I have always just been like, okay. Like I've always just been like an okay person. But for some reason in 2021, I had like one of my biggest emotional meltdowns. And it was just like, I just kept feeling like I was on edge. Like a lot of things were just going on. That is a whole story in of itself. So I remember this particular time, as I've said, I was listening to a lot of podcasts. So there's this time when the Bible verse, John chapter 10, verse 10 was read in a newsletter for a podcast that I was going through. And I remember just how the lady was explaining John chapter 10, verse 10, the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but I have come that they may have life and have it to the fullest measure. Some, I think it is NIV that says, have it more abundantly. I remember just reading that and writing it in my notebook and just wondering, life to the full, life more abundantly. People experience that? That must be so nice. what I have right now does not even feel like living. And I remember just asking myself, what does it actually mean to have life, first of all, but to have it more abundantly? Wow. It felt like, that is like added advantage. I'm like, me, I even just want to have like to have a feeling of I have life. Um but it sparked a curiosity in me, also just because of the journey that God was leading me on at that point. What does it actually mean to like have the feeling of I have life, like to feel like I am actually living? The thing that was going on during that time is I was sort of, even what was causing the meltdown during that time was I had a lot of unprocessed. Okay, when I say a lot, it sounds a bit dramatic, but I did have trauma that was unprocessed from like 10 years before that. And it had been affecting how I was showing up for literally every aspect of my life. And my not having processed it meant that I was not even aware that this thing that happened so many years back was affecting my life even right now, like my studies, my social life, like literally everything, even my relationship with God. And I just remember feeling like I want to experience what it feels like to live without this constant shadow over my head. So September now of this year, this is like, I mean, how many years after that? Now, September of this year, as I have said, I was producing a podcast for the organization I was working for called the Wellness Junction Podcast. So I was thinking about rebranding the podcast, just like I wanted to do a bit more with it. And in the process of the rebranding, at some point I realized, okay, this is turning out to be a totally different podcast. It doesn't even feel like I'm rebranding the one that was existed. So in that process, I realized like there's like another podcast that is stemming from that is growing on the side. So I remember just like sitting with God during that time, and I remember just getting the sense that there was something in the air. I have no better way to explain. I was just like, there's something God is bringing my attention to, but I really do not have a hold of it. So I just remember telling myself, you know what, I'll take like a couple of days to fast-ish. It wasn't even like fully fasting. I was just like, it's just like me setting aside time to be with God, to sort of like lean in a little bit and just hear what He is saying. And when the idea to actually like now do like a different podcast where I can freely talk about my faith came about, I was just like, this is it. This is what He was saying. This is actually the whispers that I have been catching. So when coming up with the name of the podcast, like I remember just like telling God, okay, give me a name. So then He kept like it wasn't like this pretty process of, dear God, give me a name, and then I sleep and then I hear the name Chayyim in my dreams, and I was like, and then I wake up, I'm like, okay, this is the name. It actually was not that, because it was like an entire process. So I remember there's this particular time I was sitting at my desk and I was like, what exactly is my core motivation for actually wanting to do this podcast? So then I remember that time back in 2021 when I read John chapter 10 verse 10, and it just like really stood out so much for me. So then I went and I opened John chapter 10 verse 10 on the internet, and I was just like, I'll go through all the versions there are to find, and then I'll see what I can get from this. So I went and read and just like, okay, I can see, like it was just like almost the same the interpretations were just like almost the same. I have come that they may have life and have it to the fullest measure, life to the full, life more abundantly. A lot of the Bible translations just like rotate around that. Then I was like, life to the full, and it's already like a trademarked name, so I can't use it, blah, blah, blah. So the whole process got me to a place where I was like, okay, this is a little tiring, so I'll just like take a break, come back, maybe see if anything comes up from it. But like I think I had like maybe 2 more translations that I had not read from, and one of them was the Orthodox Jewish Bible. I was just like, well, what can I get from this? I was just like, well. So then I opened it, and then what I realized was I don't know if the Orthodox Jewish Bible or the Jewish Orthodox Bible, but like one of them. So what I realized about it is they mix Hebrew names with English names. So in this specific verse, it says, the ganav, which I think is the Hebrew name for thief, comes to kill, to steal, and destroy. But I have come that they may have Chayyim and have it to the fullest measure. And when I saw it, I was like, I think we have a winner. But I was still a little apprehensive, so I was just like, okay. So I wrote it down. And then, of course, you know, like with every podcaster, when you're searching for a name, the first thing is you go and search if there's like a name with the same meaning. And I was just like, there is not. Awesome. And of course, you go and search for like a YouTube channel. You see if there's a YouTube channel with the same name. I was like, there is not. I was like, but it is an unconventional name. Is it going to catch on? Are people going to be able to actually pronounce it? Because, you know, just of how it is written. And then, it just like dropped in my mind. Ruach Ministries, Ruach Assemblies, it's actually assemblies. I was just like, Ruach Assemblies has been running for like how many years? And people don't even have like a difficulty pronouncing the name, because I think people say Ruach. I think people, you know, the ministry for Pastor Julian Kula. I think that's how the name is said. Anyway, and I was just like, I mean, the name might not make sense, but the work of the Lord will go on. And that is how it was settled. So that's sort of like the bits and pieces of how the Chayyim podcast itself came about and how the Chayyim name actually came about. So friend, you are up to speed with the origins of the Chayyim podcast. I constantly say this in every episode, but we are here to discover what it means to live our lives to the fullest measure. I don't think I'll ever be able to explain to the full extent what it deeply means to me that I am living my life to its fullest measure, and that the people around me and like the people that I care for are living their lives to the fullest measure. The time when I had that meltdown in 2021, I think is when I realized it is so possible to live your life, but like buried under, like 6 feet under trauma and a lot of things. And it's like you're just like moving through life like a zombie, not feeling any sense of purpose, purpose is sort of like even a buzzword, but like even just like feeling fulfillment from your life. And my hope and the deepest prayer of my heart is that the breath of life that God has given you, that you would be able to experience what life actually means. The interesting thing about Chayyim, especially like how this specific Chayyim is spelled, is that it is in plural form. It's like, you see how languages are usually like a bit complex? Like this specific word is like the Hebrew name, but it's actually like in plural form. And it doesn't just like stand for like life, the mere existence. It actually sort of signifies like aliveness, you know, like being actually awake to life. It is not even possible to explain it because of just how rich the word is. And I really desire for all of us in this community to experience the depth and the richness of life that the Lord Jesus Christ came so that we may have. So friend, the thief comes to kill, to steal, and to destroy. But, thank God for that but Jesus came that we may have life. And does it stop there? It is so in the nature of Jesus to be extra. He came that we may have life and have it to the fullest measure. I hope that in your existence, you get to experience what it means to have your life to the fullest measure. Thank you so much for riding this journey with me. I am praying for you to experience your life and to experience it in fullest measure.